Numbering systems and using them to your advantage when working with a schematic and converting to an actual wiring diagram is something that is extremely useful out in the field and is something that's worth investigating. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open up a circuit here and we're going to just have a very simple push button start stop with a starter and overloads and all that fun stuff. And we're going to work through how many wires end up in the pipes, or rather how many wires go to each device. So here I have a very simple push button circuit. I have my stop switch, my start switch. I have a my contactor, motor starter. I have 3 overloads. We're assuming this is a 3-phase system, so you'll have an overload for each line. And then I have my auxiliary hold in 2, 3 contacts, whatever you want to seal in, whatever you want to call those contacts, which are associated with M. So when M energizes, these contacts will close, hold the circuit in, and run. Down here is I have the physical devices. So I have a disconnect switch, so be a nice switch here, which is going to be for my power circuit, bringing power down to my motor. Then I'll have my power come through to here, and you don't see them, but you'll have the contacts that are being controlled by the M, and we'll go through down to the motor. And then I have my control circuit. So right here I have the stop switch, which is this right here. I have my start, which is right here. I have my M coil, which is right here. I have my sealing contacts, which is right here. And I have my overloads. I've only drawn it as 1 in this circuit here, but you can take the same idea because they're in series. So one side will be one side of the overloads here. This side will be to the other. Now, what we do with these circuits is the first thing is you get your schematic drawn up, and schematics are nice because they show you exactly how a circuit works electrically, but not how it's wired. But we can use the schematic to actually wire up our systems. So what we need to do is we need to number our circuits out. And so I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So you notice I've got a number here. I started with 1, which is an obvious number to start with. And when I come to this node, I name anything that's attached to that wire the same number. So 1 is here, 1 is here. And I get to a node, and when I hit that node, I switch numbers. So I now go to 2. 2 comes to here, and here's the tricky part is 2 also comes down to here because I don't have an actual node or a device. So electrically, this point, and this point are all the same electrically. So therefore, they're going to be the same number, 2, 2, and 2. On the other side here, we do the same thing with 3. I have 3 because we've got something breaking it up here. We got a switch and we got some normally open contacts. So I have 3, 3, and 3 down here. The next number would be 4. So 4 comes because I have this device in the way. Then I start a new one with 4, which gets to my overloads. And then they're in the way, so I get to my 5. And 5 is attached to the top here. So my control circuit is being controlled by 1 and 5, which could be a line-to-line voltage or a line-to-neutral, depending if you're using a control transformer or not. And we've got all our other devices numbered up. Then we go to our physical actual reality, and we go into our starter here. And what we're going to do is assign numbers to each one of these as well, and we'll take a look at what happens from there. First off, we're going to number up our stop 1 and 2. That's 1 and 2, so we put the numbers physically there. And when I'm out in the field, I physically throw some stickers on there just because I find it helps, or I just write it in pencil close by. But 1 and 2 is one side of it. I look at my start switch or start push button, 2 and 3. That's 2 and 3 there, so I just label those 2 and 3. Moving right along, I see that my coil is 3 and 4, so I go to my coil in my starter and label it 3 and 4. Now down below, I have my holding contacts or my auxiliary contacts. Those are labeled 2 and 3, so I label them 2 and 3 inside my starter. And like I said, I've got my 4 and 5, even though I have 3 here, I'm just going to count them as 1 across here. So 4 on one side, 5 on the other. And the last thing is, where are we getting our 1 and our 5 from? Depending on how you've got your circuit laid out, but oftentimes you could have a control transformer in your starter, or you're taking line-to-line voltage, which would just be off 2 of the 3 lines coming into your motor contacts. So we're going to put the 1 and the 5 in the starter contact itself as well. Now, next thing I do when I'm working this out is I'm going to throw up a number sign, a bunch of numbers off on the side here. I'm going to use them as a check mark or a check and balance to make sure that everything is covered. Now, if I'm trying to figure out how many wires are coming down through my pipes and going to certain devices, you can be guaranteed that from the disconnect switch, if we're dealing with the 3-phase system, I'm going to have 3 hots coming through to my motor starter here. And that will then go from my motor starter out to my motor. So I'll have 3 in this pipe and 3 in this pipe. That's my power. So what I'm going to do there is just quickly add a couple hash marks on there. So I'm going to just go, okay, I know I got 1, 2, 3. I've got 1, 2, 3 going down there. So that takes care of that. Next up, we need to start figuring out the wires that are going to this device here, because we need to get from our starter to our push button. And at this point, it's a game of basically connect the dots. I have a 1 here and a 1 here, which means I need to get a wire straight through from that point to that point. I have a 1 here and a 1 here. So what we're going to do is I've just got to pull a wire through that conduit. So I just put a little hash mark there just to remind myself. The next thing I do is I make sure I check off 1 over here. That way, if I get caught up in things, or I'm trying to figure things out, or I get distracted, I will always know that I've got 1 done. It seems very obvious and very simple for this circuit, but when you deal with this system in a larger control circuit, it's very easy to get things missed. So we'll take 2. We've got a 2 here, we've got a 2 in the push button, and we've got another 2 in the push button. That means that we're going to have to put an internal connection from 2 to 2. But what we're concerned right now with is getting that 2 from this point in the starter to this point in the push button. So that means we're going to be pulling a wire there. So we put a little hash mark in there. No other 2s, so we check that off. Then we're going to go to 3. I have a 3 here, and I have a 3 here. So what we need to do is get a wire from this point to this point. So we're going to just pull that through. So we mark off our 3. And again, we check that off to make sure that we don't have to go back and get ourselves confused. Then we've got 4. I don't have a 4 in the push button anymore. I do have a 4 inside here. I'm going to have to make a connection from 4 to 4. That's going to be an internal connection within the starter itself. And then 5, I have no 5 at the push button station. I do have a 5 at the overload, and then a 5 for my power. So again, an internal connection at the motor. So I can check both those off with confidence that 4 and 5 have been taken care of. So we basically have taken care of all of our wires, so we can go ahead and count them up. We have 3 power wires coming from the disconnect down into the starter, from the starter down to the motor, and then we have 3 control wires running from the starter over to the push button station. Now this is a very simplified circuit, just being a single push button start stop, but this will work every single time, no matter how complex the circuit is. You just make sure you number it up, and then you take your numbers and you put them into the actual device itself, and then it's just a matter of getting wires from number to number.